TikTok, by far, is the fastest growing social media platform on planet Earth. Falling short in terms of monthly active users, that is, for now, when compared to competing platforms like YouTube or Facebook, TikTok is able to compensate for this by capturing end user attention for an incredible amount of time when measured against its peers. Considering that fact as a business, it's wildly successful. However, what if I told you that after studying the platform for the past couple of years, while frequently warning about the destructive and psychologically harmful impacts it can have on modern youth, I'm finally ready to speculate about whether or not the platform is itself a cyber weapon. That's a very polarizing term, I know, and for quite a long time I've pointedly held back from using it due to a lack of evidence, but looking at the full scope of the picture today, I find it increasingly difficult to talk about all of this without strongly considering the possibility that this entire platform is a deliberately harmful construct intended to inflict damage on a global scale. First things first, we need context. TikTok is no stranger when it comes to controversy. In the United States, President Donald Trump attempted to ban the platform entirely during his tenure as president, only to be met with consistent setbacks ultimately foiled by a federal judge named Carl J. Nichols, a judge he himself appointed. Afterward, imposed by the subsequent administration under President Biden, TikTok would be officially banned from installation on all U.S. government hardware, while also contending with European Union policies on data protection. Similar to the United States, the app is restricted from being installed on government devices in Canada, and also faces an outright ban in countries like India, Pakistan, or Taiwan. Suffice it to say, there is a measurable amount of global scrutiny here aimed at an application which is owned and operated by a Chinese company called ByteDance. This is where things get relatively complicated, but I'll compress it down as much as possible. While facing these growing levels of scrutiny and public pressure as well, TikTok decided to fight back, implementing an initiative called Project Texas, and on paper at least, it was a very good step to take. Project Texas was primarily aimed at data protection, access control, and independent governance, but overall it was meant to alleviate concerns that the Chinese government would somehow be able to access or utilize data on American citizens for nefarious purposes. Beginning in 2021 and concluded in 2023, Project Texas became the subject of extreme scrutiny as TikTok continued to face public and political pressure, even so far as to be called in for a United States congressional hearing where CEO Xiao Chu would answer various different questions. Here's a portion of that testimony published by the Wall Street Journal.
Mr. Chu, I think your company is unique among the ones represented here today because of its ownership by ByteDance, a Chinese company. And I know there have been some steps that you've taken to wall off the data collected here in the United States. But the fact of the matter is that under Chinese law and Chinese national intelligence laws, all information accumulated by companies in the People's Republic of China are required to be shared with the Chinese intelligence services.
Pausing for a minute here, he's talking about the 2017 cybersecurity law as well as the more recent 2021 data security law, which make it mandatory for Chinese companies to cooperate with the CCP and hand over whatever data they wish to access on command. I skipped over the next part because the answer he gave had nothing to do with the question itself. He started talking about how 3 out of the 5 global investors are American and just adding information that wasn't particularly relevant. But then he says a few things that are.
The firewall of protected U.S. data from the rest of our staff.
And I'm asking about all of the data that you collected prior to that event.
Yes, Senator. We have started a data deletion plan. I talked about this a year ago. We have finished the first phase of data deletion through our data centers outside of the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. And we're beginning phase 2, where we will not only delete from the data centers, we will hire a third party to verify that work. And then we will go into, for example, employees' working laptops to delete that as well.
Was all of the data collected by TikTok prior to Project Texas shared with the Chinese government pursuant to the national intelligence laws? Is that country?
Senator, we have not been asked for any data by the Chinese government, and we have never provided it.
2 things that matter here. First, obviously, he claims that they have not been asked for any data by the Chinese government and thus have not provided it. But second, very quickly, he mentions that Project Texas firewalls U.S. data from the rest of their staff, which is probably the most important part. See, that just doesn't seem to be true. Originally published by Fortune in April of 2024, an article containing ex-employee testimony revealed that a stealth chain of command allegedly existed, where employees would be working for a U.S. representative on paper, but in reality would be reporting to ByteDance executives in Beijing. Quote, Evan Turner, who worked at TikTok as a senior data scientist from April to September in 2022, said TikTok concealed the involvement of its Chinese owner during his employment. When hired, Turner initially reported to a ByteDance executive in Beijing, but later that year, after the company announced a major initiative to store TikTok's US user data only in the US, Turner was reassigned, on paper at least, to an American manager in Seattle, he says. But Turner says a human resources representative revealed during a video conference call that he would, in reality, continue to work with the ByteDance executive. The stealth chain of command contradicted what TikTok's executives had said about the company's independence from ByteDance, end quote. That's very interesting to hear, obviously, but there's a couple more lines that I want to read in particular. Quote, nearly every 14 days as part of Turner's job throughout 2022, he emailed spreadsheets filled with data for hundreds of thousands of US users to ByteDance workers in Beijing. That data included names, email addresses, IP addresses, and geographic and demographic information of TikTok US users, he says. The goal was to sift through the information to mine for insights like the geographical regions where users watch the most videos of a particular genre, and decide how the company should invest to encourage users to be more active. It all took place after the company had started its initiative to keep sensitive US user data in the US and only available to US workers. I literally worked on a project that gave US data to China, Turner says. They were completely complicit in that. There were Americans that were working in upper management that were completely complicit in this, end quote. Okay, that's a lot, I know. However, the most important thing to keep in mind here is that data for, quote, hundreds of thousands of United States users had been sent to Beijing in order to encourage users to be more active. That's the key point here. See, TikTok is already one of the most commonly browsed social media websites on the internet. On average, TikTok users will spend more than 5, even 10 times longer browsing the platform per day when compared to Facebook or Twitter. And when the largest individual demographic of TikTok users are between the ages of 10 and 19, this means that there is a substantial impact on modern youth. Well, let's expand on that. According to analysis by EKO, suicide and sexual content is abundantly available to children on TikTok, routinely served up in disproportionate amounts through particular hashtags. Switching over to the Wall Street Journal, TikTok almost immediately produced a rabbit hole-style funnel, channeling even relatively fresh accounts into depressive content featuring sex, drugs, and other explicit material, regardless of what age the demo account had selected. Making things worse, this is a centralized algorithmic feed, not a traditional browsing experience, so once triggered, these rabbit holes of inappropriate or even harmful content would self-replicate and reinforce, leading to a downward spiral which can dramatically impact users. And to go even further, according to Amnesty International, in a piece called Driven into Darkness, quote, within 20 minutes or less, teen accounts that signaled their interest in mental health content were mostly shown videos related to depression and self-harm, end quote. No other social media contains that sort of inescapable rabbit hole, and no other social media platform simultaneously has comparable demographics of children browsing the site for multiple hours per day. Maybe YouTube comes close, but even then, not really. See the problem? Well, that's not the end of it, because understanding what's bad about the platform is only the beginning. TikTok, while unique in some respects, is not individually unique as a platform. On a global scale, TikTok refers to this short-form social media video sharing service, but domestically in China, there is an identical platform called Douyin. I say identical here, but that's not technically true. What I really mean is identical in terms of short-form video sharing functionality and a central algorithmic feed. None of this is new information, by the way, but just bear with me for a second. Douyin is mechanically similar to TikTok, but the type of content you can find there is anything but. See, Douyin is deliberately constructed to promote healthy living and is routinely building out functionality that focuses on learning, nutrition, education, and societal values. What's more, even as the platform is consistently pushing towards healthy output, the Chinese government has been strictly limiting the amount of time that children and adolescents can even engage with the platform at all. To be much more precise here, Douyin itself limits the amount of time that children 14 and under can browse the platform to less than 40 minutes per day, which is well under half of the global average for TikTok, also restricting it to certain non-school or workday-related hours. Sure, one could argue that an authoritarian government imposing restrictions on individual browsing behavior is universally bad, but let me round out the picture here with a final connecting dot. According to research from the Department of Psychology and Behavioral Sciences out of Zhejiang University, quote, To the best of our knowledge, this is the first study to explore the neural activity of watching short videos from a neuroimaging perspective. Comparing with non-personalized videos, the recommended user-specific videos not only activate the DMPFC, PCC, and bilateral parietal and temporal regions that collectively compose the DMN, but also enhance the functional couplings between DMN and primary visual and auditory regions, as well as the frontal parietal network. In addition, both types of videos activate SN, but only personalized videos activate VTA. These results suggest that the recommender algorithm is able to discover contents to upregulate the activity of a set DMN subregions and VTA to reinforce video watching behavior. End quote. That's medical gibberish, I know, and it's actually even kind of hard to read it flat out off of a page, but near as I can tell, DMPFC refers to dorsal medial prefrontal cortex, which is a region of the brain involved with maladaptive decision-making in addiction, and VTA is the ventral tegmental area, which is a key player in the brain's reward system, where dysregulation has been implicated in both depression and addiction. To summarize here, it appears that novel research out of China seems to indicate that personalized content from a short-form video platform stimulates the exact same parts of the brain when compared to crippling addiction, which would perfectly explain why and how the average user time spent on TikTok per day is consistently escalating beyond its competition. Now let's put everything together all at once. TikTok is under increasing scrutiny for its ties to the Chinese government through national security laws. To fight this, the company constructs a data protection initiative, but its own employees claim that initiative is fully ignored, while the details for hundreds of thousands of users gets routinely sent to the Beijing offices by just one worker for the purposes of increasing engagement by users. Imagine what the rest of the workers are sending. Meanwhile, the conceptual twin of TikTok, called Douyin, which is only distributed domestically in China, is deliberately skewed towards education and health, while its globally exported counterpart is consistently pulling teens and young adults into depressive algorithmic rabbit holes of sex, drugs, and depressive content. On top of this, Chinese institutions are studying, with detail I might add, how short-form personalized video feeds are similar when compared to crippling addiction, as the government imposes harsh limitations on browsing behavior and daily activity for their own domestic users, but internationally, despite congressional testimony to the contrary, the data is being sent back home for the explicit purpose of increasing the amount of engagement for this addictive platform everywhere except in China. The phrase cyber weapon sounds extremely hyperbolic to a lot of people, and generally I tend to agree. I used to fully agree with that actually, but having dug into the platform as much as I have over the past few years, I'm finding it harder and harder to sit here and say anything else. I didn't even talk right now about the degradation of attention spans, which is a serious problem, or the appearance of neurological disorders after overuse of the platform, but for today, that's probably enough. I now believe that there is a distinctly non-0% chance that TikTok is an actual cyber weapon, and yeah, that may sound hyperbolic, but I'm generally okay with it. Get your kids off of TikTok. I don't like to tell people how to be parents, that's really not my job, but if you're watching this and you are a parent, get your children off of that platform. It is exclusively a good thing to do, and it will only help them in the long run. If you want to support the channel, please do check out the links down below, Locals and Patreon in particular for monthly memberships. That's a financial subscription there. And also a hefty VPN discount with a special offer for anyone who wants to get one of those. Everyone should. It's a very good thing to have. Yep, VPN affiliate. Again, link down below. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.